Howdy. So, today I wanted to talk about something else. A friend of mine once said to me on a car trip, we were heading off to a new life. We were going to move to Half Moon Bay. And it was him and me in a two-seater Fiero traveling up to Half Moon Bay. We didn't have jobs. We didn't have anything. All we had was two duffel bags in the back of our car. Some Shinai that we were using to play with sticks, and hopes and dreams. And I was 19 at the time, and he was a professed Taoist, and he said, he said, Taoists steal truth wherever they can find it. I kind of love this notion of stealing truth wherever it can be found, and so I have kind of adopted that into my way of looking at things and my way of being eclectic. And one of the things that I find is that in my management training, in my agile development training, in product management, and in coaching, and all the other things that I do, I'm exposed to a lot of eclectic material. I mean, on one side, if I take a look at my shelf, I have the three books of occult philosophy by Cornelius Agrippa. I've got The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. I have Crucial Conversations, which honestly I don't pluck things, but this Crucial Conversations: Tools for Talking When Stakes Are High by Carrie Patterson, Joseph Greeney, Ron McMillan, and Al Schweitzer. If you do not have this book and you don't understand it, this is the single most impressive thing that I've ever come across for being able to understand how to communicate with somebody when you're in the engagement, in the immediate. But that isn't what I want to talk about. One of the areas that has been really a big part of my life for the last 5-6 years has actually been a development process. I've been in software development for most of my life. And a development process, it was invented in 2001, or it was formulated in 2001 by 17 people at a ski lodge. And it's the document that started the whole thing is called the Agile Manifesto, Agile Software Development Manifesto. Ugh. And this has basically given birth to Agile development, Agile software development. And it's a valuable piece. It's specifically tailored to software development, and as such, it's specifically tailored to making sure that it's got that it deals with the trials and tribulations of building software, of a highly changing, highly dynamic, highly volatile world where the cutting edge keeps moving and the standard of what's possible keeps moving day by day, week by week, year by year. And so there's this need for this way of living in a highly volatile life in a productive way. And how do we do that? And I want to talk about the principles behind it and how they can apply to non-software development. But to give you an idea of where we're going with this, the Manifesto for Agile Software Development reads, "We are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. Through this work, we've come to value individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan." That is, while there are values in the items on the right, we value the items on the left more. Other way. While there's value items on the right, we value the items on the left more. Now, this is a really great simplification, a narrowing in of beautiful ideas that people and communication between people probably are where the meat is at. That a working deliverable is really what we're after. And collaborating with people working together with the people that want things from you, rather than trying to set something where it's all hands free. And being flexible and responding, because the world doesn't stay static. These are predominant values. And as long as our processes and tools, our documentation, our contracts, and our plans allow us to be flexible in those areas, we're going to do fine. It was the idea that we'd be able to do it better. Now, this is at a time that the reality is it's a philosophy. And whether you think it's better or not it is debatable, because there are environments where it's easier and there are environments where it's not. And there's a lot of discussion about that in the world of all things. But the thing I want to get to is they came up with 12 principles that sit behind that. And it's these 12 principles I want to explore. We're going to talk about 6 of them today. Those are the ones I'm interested in, because if we can translate those into everyday living, I think there is value to be had there for not just software development, but for anyone that wants to. Look, we're living in a world where technology is moving at a mile a minute. We're living in a world where just trying to keep up is daunting. You know, I admit I'm getting a little older. I'm getting to that area where I've lived an entire life of change for 30 years. When I started, we were still turning the television dial by hand. The 12 channels and then the U with the little weird dial underneath that never worked for us. You know, dialing into a television channel, and now we've got Netflix, YouTube, Amazon Prime. We're on demand. Cable channels are trying desperately to keep up. Content generation is the name of the game. It's this whole entire world that's constantly evolving and constantly changing. And maybe we can draw from an infrastructure that was built to embrace change, to try to find some value that we can make use of in a larger sense, not just in being able to do work, but in being able to live a more rewarding, more productive, and quite possibly more sane life. All the while balancing the values that we need. Hey, Silver Knights, you're right. Schools haven't changed, and they're probably not going to. Neither has the base principle, the base concept of, contract negotiation. The whole principle that we have around a lot of our stuff is from old school contract negotiations, old school ideas. But, if you're turning and looking to schools to be the source of education for how to actually live a meaningful life, I hate to say it, but I don't know how effective that is anymore. Good to know. Okay. Thank you. How's the audio? So Silver Knight's telling me the stream is very choppy. Is the audio okay? Because that's good to know. Let's see what we can do here. Okay, I'm gonna have to look into the choppiness of the video. I'm sorry. I'm glad the audio is good. Thanks for letting me know. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and crank through it. I have a problem where I'm experimenting with the lighting, and I think it's causing issues with the video choppiness. But I'll look into it. I'll make sure I hit the recording and make sure I do that. So thank you so much for letting me know about that. All right. So what I want to do is I want to go through these 12 principles, because these 12 principles, oops, is that no, that's not the right one. That's the one I want. There we go. So these 12 principles operate in a way that they're basically, like I said, it's good to put it's good to put things in context. And Silver Knight, you're interested in stuff like space. space and space development, though it deals very heavily with government contract and means it's going to be regulated by certain things, the software development that's going on now with things like SpaceX and other stuff, the change is happening so fast that the old school ways of doing things can't keep up. So this is going to be relevant to if you're interested in participating in the engagement there, then this is going to be very relevant, because trying to keep up with Elon Musk is a trick. So the first principle in Agile development is that our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. Now, again, this is in a software context. It makes sense. So let's translate this. Let's change this a little bit. Our highest priority is to satisfy the customer. Well, who's the customer? If we're working for somebody, then obviously the customer's them. But if we're talking about our family, who's the customer? Is the customer our children? Is the customer our parents? Is the customer our siblings? Is the customer a higher notion of a larger world? Hey, Silver Knight, honestly, since we're chatting and I haven't had anybody actually chat with me yet. Yes, I do. I actually started for my entire career. I started as a software developer, and I did most of my work in C and C++. Now, that was a few years ago. Since then, I went from being a software developer into becoming a software development manager. And then from the software development management, I ran teams both in the US and in India, and I helped coordinate that. Java and C# are the languages of the day. So awesome. So moving into what this can be, though, this notion of satisfying the customer. We are the customer of our own environment. And so getting to where we satisfy ourselves, maybe that's where we can look at here. Maybe that's what we can look at what we're doing. So how do we do that? Through early and continuous delivery. And instead of valuable software, I'm just going to say of value. So here's this notion of early and continuous. Delivering value early, as in this really speaks to that idea of setting goals that are achievable in a short time frame. One of the hardest parts about goal setting that I've ever run into is when you set grandiose goals for something that's 3 months out. If you set goals like that, honestly, especially if you're doing it for yourself, for your own personal development, the challenge you run into is that you run out of steam after a while. Short iterations tend to work better because we can stay focused on it. Eventually, we do get fatigued if we don't do things. That's why if you have big goals, if you have big objectives, break it into smaller pieces that you can do in a 1 week or a 2 week time frame. If you can get these pieces done, then you can start accumulating successes. You can accumulate things well. And so to make sure that you've got that quickly, you need early delivery of value, of something that actually does result in something that gives something back, either to you if you're the customer, or to the customer if you're doing something for somebody else. And you want to make sure that value is moving toward the goals and aspirations of what you're after, that it fits within the strategic model of your life, if you prefer. And so the second piece is continuous. You want to deliver this value over and over and over again, preferably in an evolutionary way, so that you're delivering a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And if we look at this, especially in early stages of career development, in early stages when you're first starting out, if you look at the way that you can educate yourself, in the software environment and in most tech fields, and in all reality, in a lot more fields that are going to come in, with new jobs that are going to be invented that we haven't even thought of yet in 10 years. Education and being constantly up to date and needing to continually intake information and to continually improve our capabilities is just, that just has to become normal. Okay, quick question. All these hurricanes that hit each other each year in the Caribbean Sea and Atlantic Typhoon, do you think that all houses near coast should be built stronger, even though the houses would cost tens of thousands more? Saving lives, do you think we should keep... Construction isn't my thing. I really can't answer that. I don't know what the right solution is to reconciling against the natural disasters. I find they're horrible things, and natural disasters are really tragic when they happen. And the thing I'm in a position to do right now is to just wish those that are trying to get through that circumstance blessings and luck, and also contribute other things to it. But as far as what the reconciliation is, I don't know. I just don't know. It's not my area. It's not something I've looked into. There was a story about the guy that built his house for the 250 mile an hour winds, but now he's the only one on his block that still has a house. I don't know. These are those difficult and challenging conversations that are going to happen. And we face them. We take them on. And that's what we've got to do. And that's how we move forward. So long as we don't lose sight of that we need to continue to build in the face of destruction, then we'll be fine. If anything, it's just my hope that people don't give up. And it's really hard to do when you're sitting in the middle of real difficult times. Yep. So back to what I was talking about, and I'm going to move through this stuff and keep going. So appreciate the feedback. So when we're moving through our own value decisions, our own lifestyle, our own building, our own construction, it becomes a case of, if we can do it in small measures, if we can build and if we can do in small doses things where we can deliver value for ourselves and for our customer, or even especially if we are the customer, if our life is the product, then that really does help. And it really does make a lot of difference. Now, the last piece that is part of this is delivering value, and value is a fascinating thing. What is valuable is often not what people look at. They're not what people are moving into. They're not what people are focusing on. The piece of value is what actually returns some gain to someone, or returns some sensation of satisfaction, or gives what it is they're after. It's like when you're toilet training your kid. If you train your kid to take off his pants first, that helps. It's not the full gig. It's not the full gig, though. It's not the actual value of the entire event. It's from beginning to end, from stopping what they're doing, from walking into the room, from getting prepped, to doing their business, to wrap up and clean up after doing their business, to then getting re-put together and then back into the world. That full end to end is the actual value of the mechanism. Likewise, when we're talking about making our project plans and our personal life goals, the value of our life goal is not in the attainment of the goal, but in the achievement of the milestone. but in what the achievement puts in your hand at the end of the day, what it returns to you. And so looking to that value is what's important. So our highest priority is to satisfy the need through early and continuous or regular delivery of value. The next one in the list is this idea that we're dealing with in the modern age. What worked before doesn't work anymore. We need to welcome changing requirements even late in the development. Agile processes harness change for the customer's competitive advantage. This whole thing smacks of that notion of you can look at change as an evil or you can look at change as an opportunity. And this is where, in our age now, with software development, where we are today, more is happening so fast that we can either bury our head in the sands or we can try to embrace it, to find the opportunity in it, while also recognizing what we need to do to keep things safe and sane. In order to do that, resistance by saying no and then blocking your opinion off or blocking your vision off doesn't actually respond to the changing world as it comes into. We need to welcome the changes. We need to welcome the changing requirements in our life. We need to welcome what happens. We need to welcome, in my career, in any career, your job is going to change year over year. Maybe not even because your job description changes. Maybe it's actually the condition of your life. Maybe you now know more than you knew a year before. And so the expectation of how you will do whatever you do is going to be different. We need to embrace this. We need to embrace this dynamism. We need to embrace that the inventions that we make today are going to be commonplace tomorrow, and the day after that are going to be gone. They're going to be not as useful as the new tools. This is the age of technology. That's what it does. We also need to understand, and this is that competitive advantage piece. We can't lose track of what's really important. And in business, that's the competitive advantage. In business, that's the money. But in life, that's the value. And that could be the moral value, the ethical value, the meaning, the piece we can't give up on, the piece we can't just let go of, is needing to make sure that whatever we're developing or whatever we're putting together, whatever we're creating, whatever the world is bringing in, whatever changes are happening, that they complement what's really important. And this is something that can really get away from us if we're not careful. It really, really can. So we want to welcome change. We want to welcome the development. We want to welcome the process. And the processes that we want to adopt into our own life should be able to make use of the change. Should be able to embrace and engage that change. And that would be awesome if it could. The third one that comes up is kind of a replace. I already kind of talked about this a little bit, but keeping things to short timetables. Now, in this one, there's a in the context of what they're talking about when it comes to a delivery timeline, keeping short deliveries, keeping your goals to a short timeline, keeping your goals within a reasonable space of time, with a couple of weeks as like at the outset. They'd say a couple of weeks to a couple of months with a preference for shorter time periods. What this allows you to do is to make sure you stay relevant. And it allows you to make sure that what you're working on is still important and valuable, because in a world of constant change, in 3 months, maybe what you're working on today, maybe what you thought was important 3 months ago no longer applies. stock market changes, which changes the dynamic of how much disposable income people have. Maybe the baby's finally born. You get a promotion at work. There are 800 things that could change. And so if we keep our triggers on when we look at what we're doing and whether we're doing this idea of constantly evaluating what we're doing and whether it's valuable, or at least in some iterations, this allows us to stay on track and to stay on top of it. Now, I got to admit, in a work environment, it's okay for me because I can put my calendar up and I can work the process and work the schedule. Trying to apply this to my everyday life, it has been exhausting. It's very tiring to try to keep up. So I don't look to try to do that in every area. I make sure that the areas that I keep up in are the ones that I'm actually interested in. The ones that entertain me, the ones that inspire me, the ones that give me something to do. And this is something that I've had to try to keep an eye on, because when we're not talking about software here, we're talking about just value in life. When we're producing value for ourselves constantly, we're constantly looking for the next, there's a fatigue that can come in, and we have to know how to rest. We have to make sure that we do give ourselves that opportunity to rest, because things have to be sustainable. It has to be something we can live with, whatever we're doing. But we also want to make sure that we're staying relevant and we're staying on track, and that we give ourselves plenty of opportunity to change our mind. And that's what being agile is in this. That's what this agility is all about. So then we come into, should probably add that, huh? And then we come into the concept of, in business, we have business people and developers, the people making the product. They need to work together daily through a project. This is that notion. I've talked about this as science and industry, as fire and earth. I've given this numerous languages. This is that idea of the intellect and the reason and the planning and the vision and the strategy marrying itself to the hands that do the work. The wisdom of why we're doing something, staying connected to what we're doing. And this is a really, really important piece to have intimately connected. And this is as much a moral or ethical idea of make sure you know why you're doing what you're doing, and that you're doing it for the right reasons, and that you stay on that right path. And if you can check in regularly with that, daily, every day, all the time, and know that you're working hand in hand with the right reason, as well as the right plan and action, and actually doing the right work. This is really important, because it means that the right value is in play. And when we understand the right value, when we understand the right perspective, when we have the right notions in our mind, one side or the other, then we can align to it. We can bring things in alignment, and it makes it so that we're not working against each other. We're actually complementing each other. The work and the effort that we're doing, and the reason or wisdom that we're doing it, the reason why we're doing it, the value that we're seeking to achieve and that we've chosen, when these two are interacting closely, then it becomes a force multiplier. We end up where new ideas complement the larger strategy and the larger plan. And that's as true for daily living as it is for work. So this is tying in that strategy side. Know that what you're doing complements what's important. Because there's a lot of life that you can spend doing things that aren't. And that's okay if you need a break and you need to rest. But there's a lot of really important stuff that we could be doing too. And learning to balance that is the trick. And staying on the straight and narrow is what this is talking to. Now, here's where it gets a little interesting. The concept in the Agile environment is that the teams that are going to be working on projects are self-motivated. They're self-managed. They run themselves. They are the men on the, they're the men and women in the trenches. They're the ones that are on the ground looking at the real problems, and they understand the real need. And by communicating all this value and by making sure that they're in line with what's going on, you want the people who are best going to be motivated to work on it. You want the people that have the energy to do things. You want people that have that spark, that have that fire. You want to build a group of compatible people to do that. And then when you have that group of people, you want to give them the environment and support that they need, and just let them do the work. Let them get the work done. Now, this has really actually been a huge thing for me in volunteer work. When you work in volunteer work, you don't get to choose your volunteers. They come of their own volition and they help out in their own way, the way that they want to. And finding those that have that extra fire, that want to get engaged, you put them on projects that are the ones that need, you try to align that. You try to align that passion. You try to align that fire. You try to align that drive to what is important to them. And when you can do that, then you just need to get out of their way in a lot of cases. Make sure that you've got your communication channel in place. So when we're going to build projects, when we're going to make something new, when we're going to bring something new into the world, we want people that want that. There's a line that I'll take from somewhere else, which is, we want to gather together with those who best can work and best agree. And this is one of those wonderful things. So when you want to work on a project, be willing to do the work and be willing to agree. And that's really at the heart of driving projects forward, of driving them really valuable. And the last one I'm going to talk about today, or at least in this session, is communication. The most efficient and effective method of conveying information to and within a development team, but I'm going to say in any environment, is face-to-face. We have a lot of technology for communicating today. We really do. And a lot of people, I'm running into more and more people that think that it's sufficient, that we can communicate online all the time. Now, I have a Discord channel that I have set up for $1 patrons. I would love to communicate on chat channels, and I am on a couple of forums, and I'm looking at starting a blog, and here I am on this video thing. I get on video conferences all the time. I have done courses through webinar. I do a lot of things. I do a lot of my work through technology. But never once has technology been able to convey to me the subtle nuances of someone's frustration or joy or enthusiasm. There's always a barrier there. And I described it once, I'm a big Star Wars fan, and I described it once as, it's impossible to feel the Force through technology. There's just something about face-to-face communication. There's something about being in another human being's presence that conveys so much more information. And we're getting into an environment now where I'm noticing that in my work environment, that more and more younger staff members, people that are coming in, are not as comfortable with face-to-face communication. And I can understand that, and I really hope that that changes, because the vitality of being face-to-face with someone, being in a position where you need to get along with someone who you can't just, silence or turn off or shut down the computer or get up and walk away. Human face-to-face interaction is valuable, and it's where you learn how to live with other people. People who agree with you, people who don't agree with you. We're getting into weird contexts now where, Google algorithms make it so that you only see that which agrees with you. And though comfortable, it's probably not really the greatest thing for us being able to actually talk through conflict, to resolve challenges, to find the ways through difficult times. That requires being in a room or being in a condition where you can see and feel the responses, as well as be seen and be felt. I mean, when you're with another human being, it's hard to hate them as much. I guess it's hard to. Anonymity is not our friend when it comes to bringing uniformity or unity to life and aspiring to building good things together and making things work together. Anonymity does not help that. It just gets us in trouble. Is there risk? Yeah, of course there's risk. But we're not afraid of risk. We're okay with it. We're okay with uncomfortable. We're okay with conflict and challenge, because working through conflict and challenge makes us stronger. Not just as individuals, but as groups, as teams, as families, as communities, as packs. It's getting through the challenge that's the value in a lot of ways. You won't know that right away in the moment, but it does come, and it is needed. We could use more today. So anyway, there's a brief bit on some Agile principles that are, it's 6 of the 12 Agile principles, kind of talking about them in a modern way. I don't think the Agile principles are specifically related to software development. I think they tie into more core and key foundational elements. I think their application to software development is a good thing in the right contexts where that kind of development environment is conducive to that. I think that there are certain development environments that have more challenges, particularly those, particularly when you're dealing with constraints that you don't have control over. The getting involved in federal regulation, for example, is a good example of that. In companies, that's a big challenge. If you're dealing with government contracts, then some of the loopholes you have, some of the games you have to play in order to make sure that you're in compliance with all the regulations and everything else. And it makes it really hard to be flexible and nimble. But in other environments, in our lives a bit, we can be reflexive. We can be nimble. We can bounce around. Well, that's going to wrap it up. Actually, Silver Knight, I really want to thank you. I want to thank you for dropping on and saying hi. I'd love to invite you to become a patron and jump up on the Discord so that we can talk about other things. I love talking about other stuff when I'm not when I'm prepping these things. I'd love to have you up there. Anybody that wants to join the Patreon, I've got $1 contribution gets you as a member on the Discord. $5 gets you a little thank you on the page. Also, I really want to thank my subscribers. I really appreciate you guys getting on board. Please subscribe. Love to do more of this, and I'd love to keep going with this. This has been a talk about Agile living. I'm Miles, and we'll talk next time.